Hello and welcome back to Equity, TechCrunch's flagship podcast about the business of startups. I'm Rebecca Balan, and today, with the holiday week shaking up our usual news schedule, we're bringing you a conversation between TechCrunch venture editor Julie Bort and Paul Copplestone. Regular listeners will know that vibe coding has taken the tech industry by storm. And it's not just creating breakout players like Lovable and Replit, but also the startups that are providing the picks and shovels. Copplestone is the CEO and co-founder of Supabase, the open source database platform that's become the backend choice for the vibe coding world. Let's hear what Paul has to say.
Hello, Paul. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So you are sort of living the dream of founders. You started this open source project, you got into YC, and now things are going gangbusters. You find yourself in the center of the vibe coding revolution, so to speak. So tell us a little bit about the early days. Like when you first started this, did you dream about where you are?
I think we knew that we wanted to build a database company and something big, ambitious. It's hard to predict what could have happened around the past couple of years, of course, but we knew that we had a very deliberate database strategy. We knew how we wanted to go about building the company. And we've been pretty deliberate about how we've gone through the motions.
And in 2020, vibe coding wasn't even a thing. So, and you just nabbed a $5 billion valuation just 4 months after hitting $2 billion. So, I mean, could you have imagined that? I'm curious about the milestones that got you there,
I think the big change came this year, but it's one of those classic success feels like an overnight thing, but actually you've been grinding for 5 years. So what happened at the end of last year was the AI kind of vibe coding trend kicked off, predominantly driven by two platforms that started it, Bort and Lovable. And then there, throughout the year, was a slew of other companies, V0, Figma Make, and we are the back end for a lot of these platforms. So they've driven a lot of our growth this year, especially in terms of top line numbers. And we kind of built the platform specifically for this audience without knowing that the audience would come along. And that's where the early days came about. We've been kind of gearing up for the developer audience for a long time and building a tool that's very integratable. And it turns out that the way we had built it was just really primed for LLMs.
You have talked about, what's sort of called the enshittification of dev tools. You've talked about making deliberate decisions along the way in which you've said sort of no to big contracts because you thought it was going to take you in a different direction. Can you talk a little bit about some of those decisions that came along and how you were thinking at the time?
Yeah, it's not so much that we're against big contracts, but against the type of contracts that drag your company around, if you know what I mean. So I've seen this pattern happen. I'm probably a lot older than I look. I've been around the developer tool space for a long time, and I've seen this pattern emerge time and time again. I really love this developer tool, and it has this great community around it. It's very easy to use, and then they get some success and enterprises start to use it, and they really swing really hard towards the enterprise audience. And at that stage, they kind of lose touch with the developer segment. The only counterexample I can really think of is Stripe. They've done a fantastic job by staying relevant for developers for such a long time. And so what we wanted to be very deliberately was like a Stripe experience, but on the database side.
So tell us about one story where an enterprise came in and said, we want to hand you a whole bunch of money, and you said no. Was there a case like that?
It's happened many, many times. And each time it feels very painful. At the start, when we had no customers, it could have just been a $10,000 support contract per month. And you think, well, that's great. And then these days, it's $1 million contracts that maybe aren't what our organization is going to be focused on for the next 1 or 2 years. And so if it doesn't fit our roadmap quite precisely, then we'll just say no. We don't want to bring on the type of customers who have a bad experience with our current stage. We know that we're going to build something that eventually they'll want. And so we'll just keep building it. And then when it's ready or nearly ready, we'll approach them again and ask them to use it. Or actually, generally, we don't have to ask. We're very PLG. There's this motion, product-led growth, and that's very traditionally how we do our growth. People come on, they try the platform, they love it, and then they start using it, they consume it, they pay for it. So very much like a SaaS. And then what we're starting to do is something called product-led sales, where we can identify maybe through firmographics or through usage patterns, the type of organizations that we might want to work with that are slightly larger and a bit beyond our current capabilities. And then we approach them to build out the next stages of our platform.
So you do it in reverse. You figure out what the features that you think you should add to support your developers are. And then you go to big enterprises and say, we're about to roll this out. You want to sign with us? Do you have like an enterprise sales force?
Yes, we do. We do.
So you've raised a lot of money in the last year from VCs. So like, why take all the money? You guys are clearly growing insanely fast. You're one of the select few AI companies that are being pursued and VCs really want a piece of. Why say no to customers and yes to VCs?
I think we already have an abundance of customers, so it's a bit easier to say no to. The reason why we took on the money was really for acceleration. We're seeing growth on the customer side, which is beyond what we're able to grow as an organization and as a product. So we need to really accelerate a lot of our product and platform to keep up with the customer demand. We're all in on Postgres, and so we've got some customers that are really hitting the upper limits of Postgres. It's extremely scalable, but it does have some upper limits. And so as part of this round, we're developing new initiatives to make Postgres even more scalable.
Oh, are you going to give back to that? Are you going to contribute back to the main open source project?
Yes.
Okay.
We had 3 main projects there, and one of them is a new storage engine that we hope to complete the upstream and give back to the Postgres community. Another one is a sharded Postgres solution, which we'll develop in the open source. There's a solution for MySQL already, and the creator of that is coming to Supabase to build the same for the Postgres ecosystem.
Oh, interesting. How did you land that person?
They approached me. Actually, they wrote to me on LinkedIn, which I don't often browse. And so they couldn't get in touch with me, and they reached out through the Postgres community. They found out some people that I'm connected to, and then we got on a call. And I actually said to him, well, yes, it sounds great, but Supabase is open source, so I'll only allow this if you do it in the open source ecosystem. And that, funnily enough, was the thing that he wanted to make sure that he could do. He was really interested in keeping it as an open source project. So we were very quickly aligned, and within 2 weeks, we hired him and he's building. And that's another reason why we took the round. We really wanted to accelerate this development. We think it's great for the Postgres ecosystem. All
right. So you have this superstar Postgres developer, and you're maxing out the upper limits of this database traditionally beloved by developers. Is this like a warning sign to Oracle, who's owned this market forever? Like, is the death of Oracle around the corner with vibe coding and improvements in alternative databases?
I think the death of Oracle will take a generation. Oracle, the database. I've heard an interesting stat. I don't know. Hopefully someone can correct me if I get this wrong. Something like only 5% of Oracle workloads have been migrated to the cloud. So there is a huge amount of business being generated and run on Oracle, but it's all historical business. And it's very hard to do database migrations. So hard that, in fact, it's our entire strategy. We decided if we're going to build a database company, we needed to look in the past, over the last 2 decades, which databases have actually managed to succeed in becoming a database company. And we could only find 2 examples. The first was Firebase, and the second was MongoDB. And these 2 won not by building a bigger, better database that would migrate workloads. They started by either tapping into a new wave or by targeting developers that would build an application from day one and then make sure that they never want to leave. So this is our entire strategy at Supabase. You see it in the tagline, build in a weekend, scale to millions. we capture you for this very easy getting started experience. And then we make sure that you never even want to leave our platform because it's so good and so scalable.
So a decade from now, it's not going to be the person who had dedicated her life to being an Oracle database admin. It's going to be someone who never has messed with an Oracle database in their lives, probably, right?
Absolutely. I think Postgres is eating the world. It's now the most popular database of all databases. And I think it'll continue to be that way because of the open source and commercial nature of it that pretty much no other database has at the moment.
Well, no one's been able to do it for decades. So this is exciting to watch. We'll see. How is it that you keep your company culture okay when you're taking on so much money and you're hiring and you're building? This is usually where, someone who has investigated startups that have melted down many times, this is usually where it happens. Talk a little bit about what you're doing to manage through hypergrowth.
First, a bit of background. Supabase is a little bit unique in that we're not just a remote company, but extremely distributed and async. So we don't have any offices around the world. Our workforce is spread across 40 different countries, and pretty much all of our work happens online. Our teams might have maybe only one meeting a week. So if you're an engineer, you might get FaceTime for 30 minutes with your team, and then the rest of the communications is asynchronous. This has its pros and cons, and a lot of these scaling challenges, I think, are quite masked because you're focused on your team, on your delivery. And at Supabase, it's been less of an issue because a thing that we realized very early on to make an async company successful was that we would only hire very autonomous and senior people. And because of this, as we have continued to grow, they are very adaptable. They know what to do. They're willing to give away their Lego. They've been through this experience before. And so as we've been growing, they're very adaptive to the nature of the company. The other thing that the async nature brings, which is really a benefit, is that because everything's written down online, it's very easy for me to see where things are going a bit awry and just pull the alignment back into place.
So how many employees now? And actually all the updated stats you can give me about where you're at.
We are around 220 people. We grew from 95 at the start of this year. So we might end up being around 250, it looks like, by the end of the year. We have on our platform around 5 million, or over 5 million developers who have launched over 10 million databases. A lot of them are kind of powered by this agentic workload now. Databases being launched by Lovable, Bort, or even Cursor or Claude Code. And we have about 100,000 paid accounts, over 100,000 paid accounts.
250 people completely distributed is a challenge. It's interesting. I'm curious over the years how you're managing that kind of growth. But for now, what I really want to know too is what are you seeing in the vibe coding world? So there's been a lot of talk about, okay, should people even still learn to code? Do you think people should still learn to code?
Yes, absolutely. I think there's still a huge benefit to knowing how to code. I think there are some limits towards, vibe coding or even AI coding. They're getting much better, but even a good workman, no matter how good his tools are, should really understand how to use them and the depths of the tools that he's using. So what I'm finding are the best, even some of our best engineers that use AI tools, they understand how things are architected together. And because of this, they can use the tools more effectively. What we're generally seeing inside the vibe coding, especially the vibe coding platforms throughout this year, is that they started off with these integrations. People maybe started with developing just a front end and a small application. And it was pretty cool because they were builders and they traditionally couldn't even get that far. Now they are more ambitious. They want to build entire applications. They want to make money. And so what these platforms are doing is they're getting a fully integrated experience. For example, under the covers, they'll use Supabase to do all of the backend. They might integrate with Stripe, and then they'll provide a really kind of opinionated stack for their users so that they can become more successful on these larger applications.
But these are these are already trained developers doing this level of advanced work? Or are you seeing people like me who barely know my way around, know a little HTML? Like, I am not a developer, but are you seeing people like me jump in and be like, hey, I'm going to do this application?
Yeah, there's many different profiles for the AI tools. So the likes of the Claude Code, the Codexes, these are traditionally more developers. And what we're seeing from the AI platforms, the vibe coding platforms, is
Yeah.
more around maybe a kind of entrepreneur, but also now starting to bleed more into enterprises that, especially product managers, there's this saying that they have demos, not memos. So traditionally, what product managers would do inside larger organizations is they'd do a product requirements document and they'd write down everything. It'd all be text. Then they'd throw it over to the developers who would have to figure out what they mean from text. But now what they can do is they can actually build out using the same design system.
You're still just seeing most of the vibe coding going on at the demo level. You're not seeing these folks put together applications that are going out in the world, not quite yet.
On the enterprise side is more the product developers, but on the builder side, we are seeing people becoming successful.
Is that code any good, or is it buggy and destined for problems because they're not trained developers?
I think the AI platforms need to get much better if they want to scale up.
Okay, that was a nice way of saying it. I think I'm going to take that as not quite good.
There are definitely limits. I mean, let's say we have some customers that scaled from 0 to 1 million users in 10 days. A developer built that application. Would I be confident in a application that was a 10-minute prompt from a from a non-developer to manage the same scale? I'm not entirely certain, but the tooling is phenomenal. Like the AI models, the progress is phenomenal, and they're starting to write. For example, I write a lot of database code. They're starting to write database code better than I can. So I think that it'll become more around not can it write the code. It's just understanding architectures.
So what's your prediction for the solo unicorn? That's the whole thing. We're going to see the first solo employee company unicorn. What's your prediction for that? You think that's really going to happen?
Eventually.
Doubtful, right?
Depends how fast inflation is growing everything.
But what about junior developers? I mean, so the big concern is that vibe coding is basically taking the place of junior developers, and we're sort of creating a gap in the marketplace because these people need to come in and to be trained so that they can be the senior developers, running things in a few years. So are they really being left out? What are you seeing there?
I think we've seen this pattern. History doesn't repeat, it rhymes. We've seen patterns like this. This is a bigger pattern, a bigger disruption than traditional ones. But for example, it used to be that you would be a full stack developer. Then things broke into front end and back end, and then things broke up into SREs. The patterns change and the way of interacting with code bases change. I think there's going to be some disruption in this space, but there'll be a space for that junior developers will adopt more rapidly than the traditional heavy engineering type developers.
So it's feeling like just a blink in time where these vibe coding tools are coming up and companies are like, oh, we're not going to hire. We're just going to do this and have our senior developers manage. You're not feeling like, oh, agents are going to completely take over that part of the world.
No.
Okay.
No. I don't think that's the future that will happen. Yeah.
So what's your advice? Like many of our listeners dream of being getting into YC, discovering you're in the middle of the next big thing and having growth like crazy. So what's your advice to the founders who are at the beginning of the grind?
Yeah, well, keep grinding. You can't avoid that. The thing that we really focused on at the start was good positioning and a phenomenal product. And even to this day, that's all we're really focused on. We want to build a product that is incredible for our users. And if you can continue doing that and position it well, then you hopefully will get the same amount of luck that we have had. So it's also worth calling out that, yeah, as much as we did all the steps that we need to take, there's an element of luck that is involved. And you need to kind of generate a lot of luck. But yeah, I think it's played a significant part in our journey.
Well, you can account for luck, right? But you're like, if you stay focused on the customer and you don't get whipped away by demanding customers.
I mean, we ran a PLG business, right? So PLG often gets crushed by the demanding customers. What you need to build for is the million customers, and that's what we've been doing. So if an enterprise came and they asked for a feature that was applicable to a million other users, we'd definitely do it for them. There'll be a lot of startups that should not serve the million customers. They should be focused on the enterprise user and get one or two. And actually, in some ways, it's a much easier business. You can really work with them as a design partner. PLG is incredibly hard. A database company is incredibly hard. So I think if I could give some advice, it's don't do databases, and definitely don't do PLG databases. But yeah, it's a focus on product, and a definite focus on your customers is what really matters.
Well, one of the big changes in the database world, apparently, so for the first time ever, these agents are coming in, right? For the first time ever, non-humans are going to be the ones that are doing the database admin, doing the human jobs for the first, ever, at a higher rate than humans. How is that changing, how you're building, or, what you think is going to happen to the database?
Yeah, there's a huge amount of change happening here, and probably too many topics to touch on. One that's been really neat is that databases, especially relational databases like Postgress, are all written in SQL. And this is quite an esoteric language, but it's old. And what we've discovered is that LLMs are very good at these languages that have been around for a long time. So you can, as a non-database developer now, build on top of Supabase by just prompting it. You literally, this is how I do a lot of my work, and we put a lot of guardrails around it. And so that's one way. Just as a database developer, you're now much more enabled. The other thing that I'm quite excited about on the AI side with databases is as they scale, they become a little bit difficult to use, largely because of the way that things could be structured or the type of data. And I'm quite keen on this idea of a self-driving database where you can use AI to diagnose the problems and even make small corrections and adjustments throughout the day. And these can see traffic patterns. For example, they might see things like your customers are logging in and following the sun, and it could fail over from Singapore to Europe when the sun is rising, and then Europe to America, and it'll just understand a lot of this. And so a lot of this kind of boring work, to be honest, that the data engineers used to have to do, they now can step back and just kind of leave it to the AI tooling.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so you should learn to code, but SQL is going the way of COBOL or whatever. Like you may not have to learn that ever again. What languages should you be coding to future-proof yourself? So if it's not going to be these older esoteric languages.
It actually doesn't matter too much. Like if you want to use a database, Postgres, you have to understand the SQL. The generation of the code is maybe going to be started by an LLM, but you still need to be able to read it, whatever code it is, whether it's Python or JavaScript. So when you're working collaboratively, you need to understand, someone's trying to merge this feature in with my feature. I need to understand, is it going to break my feature? And you need to be able to read the code. So I don't think any of the languages are going away. Perhaps just the way we interact with the languages has moved from directly coding to a level up.
So continue developing your own personal ability to code these directly. There's nothing that's going away,
For sure.
You're going to hand off stuff. I mean, it sounded like you were saying you couldn't wait to hand off your site reliability engineering off. Is that a job you think vibe coding and AI, do you think that job is either going away or be very limited?
I think it just reduces the number of people that are dedicated to any particular task. So in the past, you might have needed a team of 10 people to administer an extremely large database cluster. And now with the assistance of an LLM, you can do this with perhaps only one person.
So what are the new jobs?
There's just more applications being built. The amount of application, I mean, we have launched this year, not this year, but over the course of 5 years, 10 million databases. That's an incredible number of databases. I don't think between the period of 2000 and 2005, maybe there would have been 10 million databases launched in the entire world. Who knows? But, the amount of stuff that's being built these days is just exploding. So I think there's plenty of opportunity. It's just being spread out.
Is there a specific job role that you think is growing? So application engineer?
Entrepreneur. I think that's the one that really is helping. Yeah, it's growing a lot.
Yeah.
It's true, actually. Like I've chatted to some friends who they didn't even know what Supabase did, and now they do. They're non-product people. They had never written a line of code, and now they're showing me their applications that they've built, and they're super excited to get their customers, and they're showing off how many customers they've signed up. Traditionally, they would have to find an engineer who's getting paid $230,000 in some other place. They can't convince them to move from their job to help them with their little project that they've been thinking about in the shower for 10 years. But now they can build that themselves, so they suddenly are a builder, which is kind of cool.
So we often hear a lot about the grind of building a startup, and it does sound like you're still in the grind, even as successful as you've been, particularly over the last year. What's one great thing? What's one great thing about being a CEO of a startup that everyone's watching that is growing like mad? Did you buy a new car? Are people taking selfies with you on the street? I don't know what it would be in your world, but what's one great thing about it?
No, I definitely, I don't have a car. And I try to avoid selfies. I think mostly is growing I'm very excited by our company and growing a team of people that are really, our culture at Supabase is just to build the best tools. And we find, because we can hire from anywhere in the world, there are people who just want to put their head down and build. And I was very worried at the start when I told our investors, we're going to build a remote company. Luckily, COVID made it kind of an option for us. And I thought, I would have to do this kind of in-person company. And I thought, all right, I would have really loved to build this async company. And now what I'm really enjoying is the ability to do that with just really good humans. The more that we succeed, the more we're able to convince not just good engineers, but good humans to come and work in our team. So it's quite a pleasure logging on every day and seeing the messages, what people are building. It's quite exciting.
The best thing is you got to choose not to build an office. You don't have to go to an office every day.
No, yeah. To live the deliberate CEO life.
That's great. Where can people reach you?
I'm usually on Twitter on Kiwi Couple, or you can find our company on supabase.com. That's Supabase with an A, SUPA.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We enjoyed having you.
Thanks, Julie.